Advised.
What do card-carrying commies, atheists, and KKK and sodomy freaks all have in common, huh? What do you think? Alphabet soup, baby, the ACLU, that esteemed organization that thinks any restriction on morality or patriotism violates somebody's constitutional rights. Well, tonight we're going to ask the ACLU boys why things like defending your home, defending your preborn child, violates somebody's rights, but sodomy, bestiality, and treason are well within your rights. Tonight, you and me against the ACLU. Join us. In Detroit, accepted. Philadelphia, accepted. Miami, accepted. Los Angeles, accepted. When they heard you were going to be on the show with us, they all declined.
Oh, isn't that a shame?
All declined. So, they can't, these great bastions of freedom can't take the heat.
That's right. They know all about freedom of speech except giving an opportunity like someone like myself, who's a conservative critic of the organization, to run them down. I know more about your organization. I know more about your organization than you
carry a card. Tell me why you carry a card.
Right? Okay.
Why do you pay your dues every year? If it's that bad, you're using your money to do what he says.
You've tried to cut me off. The ACLU did not want me to see the FBI files on the organization, yet the FBI made them available to me sooner than the ACLU. You people ought to practice civil liberties. If you say you're in favor of civil liberties, why are they reluctant to debate me? Why don't they open up their files to
Can I get a list of their membership? No.
No, you can't get a list of their membership.
They don't allow you to have that.
No,
they don't want anyone to have that, right?
No, they won't.
The organization that wants privacy, give it up for everyone
Well, you know
else.
what really kills me about this? James Agee, a couple of years ago, was a CIA agent. He left the CIA. He published the names of people in the CIA. One of those men was shot. The ACLU defended him, saying that this was freedom of speech. And yet, when the FBI came out with their documents and showed how the ACLU was cooperating with the FBI in the 1950s, the ACLU, Aria Nair, the head of the ACLU at the time, didn't want these files to come out because all of a sudden they discovered the rights of privacy of these people. You're phonies. You're a fraud.
All right, tell you what. If the ACLU has its way, will the Pope go to jail for tax evasion? Stick around and find out. Come on. There have been shows, we have had Zip It, we have had programs where we have heard ACLU men say that we want In God We Trust off the dollar bill, that we want one nation under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got people like these two slimes sitting in the second row here, camera, from Orlando, Florida, from Atlanta, Georgia, who would take God out of the coins, all right? Slime like that. Well, tonight, we're not going to ask the slime like Longwell and Green to explain it to you. I'm going to go to a former judge, Judge Cy Friedman. Let me get this straight, Cy. First, the ACLU wants to take God from the dollar to separate the church from the state. Then, on the other hand, they want to tax all the churches. Now, what the hell happens to the separation of church and state, pal, huh? Don't be such a friggin' hypocrite.
Well, you know,
trying to answer your question is like being a Knickerbocker playing in the Boston Garden. But I will answer your question. We
I
have
haven't
the
called them
principle.
Knickerbockers for about 80 years, Judge. That shows where your brain is.
Okay. Let me say this to you. By the way, I know you're a heavy smoker. Do you really need that big ashtray here?
Yeah, I do, because this is the only press award I ever won, and that's what I think of the press. Please.
One of the principles that is taught a lawyer is to defend somebody no matter how despicable his cause. However, I will say this. I don't find their causes despicable. For the most part, they're laudable. I know that they've helped people gain election rights. I know that they've helped in putting a focus on what the death penalty is and was, namely death for those who are too poor or of the wrong color.
Ted Bundy is too poor, huh?
No, but what about
He's a law student.
What about all the blacks and the poor?
Wait a second,
went,
sorry.
that went
This
to
is to say,
share,
wait a second. This is Judge.
and the rich ones
Judge,
with money didn't.
I agree with you. The rich ones, if you got enough dough, don't go, all right?
And the
You're
Civil
absolutely right.
Liberties Union
But
does
remember this.
represent the small
Since the
person.
Supreme Court reinstituted the death penalty, all right, there have been 28 killings.
So?
25 of them have been white. What are you talking about? The blacks are getting it all the time.
You asked me about separation of church and state.
Right, that was the question.
That is one of the most cherished principles that the court has evolved.
What
to.
does the Constitution
Now,
say about separation of church
well,
and state, sir?
the Constitution merely talks
Does it
about
say separation
there shall
of
be
church
Here's
no
the
established.
Constitution. Read it.
It
I
doesn't,
don't have
does
to.
it?
I know it. Now, the Constitution.
You read it for me. Read it for me right there.
The Constitution says
Read
it
it.
shouldn't establish a religion.
You shouldn't establish a religion.
Yes.
Exactly and precisely.
Now, let me say this to you. We've had situations about prayer in public school. I believe they're right. There should be no prayers recited in the public school. Now, you shake your head. You have 35 million viewers, and I will tell you now that in spite of your shaking your head, and in spite of the home team audience, 29 of them agree with me.
I guarantee you you're wrong.
And I guarantee you I'm wrong.
Guarantee you you're wrong. Guarantee it. Tell you what, everyone who agrees with the judge, turn off your television set now for the next 15 minutes. We'll be able to decide on the ratings tomorrow whether indeed the judge is correct. In 15 minutes, turn them back on again, all right? We'll find out. Judge, what I got to tell you is that when you talk about separation of church and state, we all know, you quoted it properly, Congress will not form any religion, will not recognize any religion. Congress is not recognizing a religion by using the word God, are they? Does God mean
my
a religion?
personal opinion?
Yes.
I believe that you will see within the next decade or two the elimination of the word God from the Pledge of Allegiance.
I believe, sir, I believe if you do indeed see that, that you will see a satanic country that will be under the domination of socialist, communist slime like you. Now, Mr. Downey, let me go to this gentleman. Let me go to this other gentleman. We've got Lawrence Cranberg. Lawrence, let me introduce you.
Thank you.
Lawrence Cranberg was the founder of the Virginia ACLU.
I founded the Virginia ACLU on the assumption that the ACLU was the organization that it had been. I founded it in the mid-'60s on the assumption that it was the same organization that had earned the praise of Eisenhower, of Harry Truman, and of John F. Kennedy in the 40s and 50s. That was the organization that I thought I joined.
Now, what did you join? What did you join?
I discovered the organization that I had joined when I went as an official delegate in the midst of the Vietnam War to the Biennial Conference in 1968, and I discovered that I was an object of scorn and contempt because I was a traditionalist. I was completely out of step with the new form of the ACLU took in '68. Under the guise of activism, they adopted a flaky, ultra-left program in every area. They completely abandoned the moral...
Flaky and ultra. What was flaky and ultra? Tell me.
Flaky and ultra.
Yes. What?
Pornography, obscenity, child pornography. Total opposition to religion. Let me read to you. Let me read
war.
You're waving
Let me
your
read
finger,
war.
but I don't know what
Later
you
on
mean by the
became
word
wrong.
pornography. What do you mean by the word pornography? What do you mean?
May I address the question of the role of
Look,
God?
I know you guys don't know what child pornography is. That's how far you've come. You don't even know it. You don't even know what this is.
Judge, you know the slogan of the ACLU, don't you?
Yes.
What is it?
You tell me.
No, you tell me,
you're
you're
against
Judge.
pornography.
You tell me. Judge, you tell me. Judge, you tell me. I think you're full of crap. I don't think you know.
All right, I think you're full of crap.
Well,
I
then
wanna
tell me.
him-
Tell me, fat mouth. Tell me. Wait a second. You're not on your bench now, fatty.
told me.
Tell me. You don't have any robes on.
You're loud now.
Yeah.
You can yell as much as you want, but I'm going to get a smile out of you. What?
Tell me what the ACLU slogan is.
You tell me why you say you're against them because they deal with pornography. What do you mean by that?
Let me discuss the question of religion and the role of
What
God.
happened?
No, pornography. It's pornography. That's what he's asking about.
You know what their stand is on pornography. They are an absolutist First Amendment. Read the proposition that exists in
Go ahead, read it.
You'll find it.
Read it. Read it.
All right. Read it. Read it. Come on, now.
Policy number 4 of the ACLU. The ACLU opposes any restraint on the right to create, publish, or distribute material to adults or the right of adults to choose materials they read or view on the basis of obscenity, pornography, or indecency. Laws which punish the distribution or exposure of such material to minors violates the First Amendment. That's the ACLU.
Now, hold it.
Judge, before we leave
You're
the
funded by the
question...
Playboy Foundation. You get your money from the Playboy
Professor.
Foundation, don't you?
Professor,
Judge,
you want to just keep yelling?
No,
Is that the way you teach? If I got you on a slow
don't
boat
say
and debated you...
You want to talk about ashtrays. That's all you want to talk about.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you something. Are you for the censorship of pornographic material blanketly? Are you for that, Professor?
Am I for what?
Talk, don't you hear?
Am I here
telling
for
you.
what?
I said, are you against pornography per se?
I am against,
Censorship
I
of all
am in favor of
pornographic
the
material.
Supreme Court ruling, which has said that obscenity has never been covered by the First Amendment, which is more than I can say for you, pal.
Hold it. Let me tell you something. The ACLU...
Wait a minute, are you against the movie rating system? Your organization is against the movie rating system. You know why?
Are you
because
asking
you don't like the X rating. You know why? Because the airlines are intimidated from showing X-rated movies. That's your own policy, pal. You better find out about it.
Are you asking me? Are you asking me?
Before we leave the subject
All right,
of God...
I'll tell you what. Wait
Go
a second. I'm going to come back to you, Virginia, in just a second. Next, a look at policy number 242, which says all criminals, except those guilty of murder or treason, should get suspended sentences and be sent back to the community. We'll duke that one out. Join me. Let me zip it a second. I want to introduce another player at home base here. We have Ann O'Flanagan sitting with us. Faith in me, all right. I know I'm going to get the right answers this time, right? Wrong. Annie, one of the shining achievements of the ACLU was making murder legal and successfully lobbying for minors now to get abortions without telling their parents. How could a nice little Irish Catholic girl like you support something like that?
I believe that a woman has a right to self-determination and to determine what happens with her body.
Why do you say it's her body?
It is her body.
It is not her body, sweetheart.
It is
50% of them are
her
born with balls.
calls us.
Carry a fetus.
You've never known anyone's balls to carry a fetus.
Mort,
I've never known anyone with balls to murder one either.
Mort, I knew she was in trouble the minute you called her sweetheart. And I'll tell you something else.
Why, you don't like the word sweetheart?
Listen, don't call me sweetheart.
What do you want me to call you?
It takes one to know it. It takes one to know it. And let me tell you something else. I'm not a Dukakis fan. I'm not a Dukakis fan.
Let me hear.
I want to know. I'm not a Dukakis fan. But one of the things that's in his favor is that he's a card-carrying member of ACLU.
That's in his favor?
Yes, in his favor.
I would say that's as much in his favor as Gorbachev with a map of Afghanistan on his head.
And we will see how many of your 35 million viewers agree with him.
Right here, you got two card carriers right here. Why don't they tell us why they carry them?
Oh, I'll tell you why they carry them, so they can find out what you guys are trying to sneak over on the American public.
Those things they don't want.
Let me hear this.
Another 10 seconds, Professor Smiley will start yelling again.
Judge, you're a judge. What do you think of this? What do you think of this bumper sticker that the ACLU puts out? Long live justice.
Well, they are the best three judges on the Supreme
Brennan,
Court.
Marshall.
They are.
Your idea.
They are the best
That's
judges.
your idea. It's judicial impartiality.
You guys are nonpartisan, right? We never know where you guys stand on politics. You're so nonpartisan.
probably think
we
Holmes
never
and
know
Frankfurt
that.
is no good either, right?
It's really amazing. You know, you guys
And all
you've
the
been
other
selling
good
this line.
judges, too.
You've been selling this line since 1920 that you have no political agenda. You are the legal arm of the liberal left.
But tell me,
That's
why
right.
do you pay your dues?
That's right. So
Why
I
do
can
you
keep up
pay
with the
your
information.
dues every
So I can
year?
get the information about your organization.
Why?
Let me ask, Dr. Cranberg, let me ask you a question. Is abortion a civil liberties issue? I mean, where in the Constitution does it say all women have the right to abort their children? If the ACLU is so worried about people's rights, why doesn't it care about the rights of those who really can't defend themselves? The preborn.
When you get pregnant and carry a baby, you'll understand.
Listen, pal, if I went before a judge like you, I'd be screwed so many times, I should get pregnant.
The biggest question is what happens to the child after it's
Mort,
born.
I
Let
wanna-
him answer that.
Mort, I want to talk about the crimes against the born. Let's pass for a moment the crimes against the unborn.
Give it to me quickly, though.
Okay,
Doctor, all right?
what I'm concerned about is the fact that they publish literature like this, The Rights of Prisoners, which incites prisoners to defend themselves against the alleged inhumanity of the prison system by engaging in struggle. When I called the author of this piece, I said, by struggle, do you mean violent struggle? And what did he say to me, David Rudofsky, on the telephone? He said, yes, if necessary.
Let me hear. Let me hear,
Incredible
Pistol.
atrocity.
Yeah, let me give you
Let
an
me hear
example
from
of the ACLU's position. I testified before the U.S. Sentencing Commission on what kind of penalties you should have for various crimes. And the Sentencing Commission asked Alvin Bronstein, who's head of the National ACLU Prison Project, to tell them which, in his view, is the worst crime. One where a man walks into a government building with a shotgun and blows away his wife, or a used car salesman who rolls back the odometer. His answer was a used car salesman who rolled back the odometer because there are more victims who may be buying the cars, whereas when the lady who got shot, that was only one victim. That shows you where the ACLU is.
What mentality? What mentality?
Your Honor, a former judge, what would you think of the idea of going to a testimonial dinner thrown by the Civil Liberties Union, which is also a fundraiser, while you were sitting on the bench? Do you think that's ethically proper?
Of interest to me.
Do
I
you think
can't
that's-
discuss that. I don't
You can't
know.
discuss it?
I don't know.
It's not... It's beneath contempt. The ACLU is undermining the integrity of the courts. They're undermining the integrity of the bench. They're tearing the code of judicial ethics to pieces.
How? Show us how. I like to see how.
By
Let me
doing
give you an
stunts
example of
like
New Jersey.
this. Here, read it.
You read it. You read it. Show me. You read it. How does this integrity of the bench?
Let me go to Paul. Let me hear Paul.
How can you say
Judge,
that?
Judge, just 1 minute. Let me hear Paul, then we'll come back.
Let me give you another example.
One at a time,
Let me give you
Doctor.
another example of how the American Civil Liberties Union is. About 7 years ago, Walter Polavchik came to the United States with his folks from the Soviet Union. His dad wanted to go back. The Soviet authorities said, you can't come back till you bring the whole family back. He tried to get his son to go back to the totalitarian government. Walter was here with two aunts, loved the freedom of America. And where did the ACLU come in? They represented the parents, the Soviet parents, to take Walter back to the Soviet Union. They were unsuccessful, thank God. Walter is now a citizen of the United States. He was sworn in as a citizen by President Ronald Reagan. No thanks to the ACLU.
And while we're talking about the Americanism of
Quickly,
the ACLU...
then I want to hear from the judge.
Well, I beg your pardon?
Quickly, doctor, then I want to hear from the
Let me say
judge.
this to you, doctor.
Let me finish.
In total, if the ACLU weren't in existence and didn't fight for human rights and civil rights in this country, you and the professor would not be here talking.
That is total crap. Let me tell you something, doctor. If the ACLU didn't exist, there would be. They, who allowed the Nazis to march in Skokie, they, of course, would also be visited by an extra 22 million Americans who will live on this earth right now because they allow for the abortion of them. Now, we'll be right back, all right? Who's responsible for the homeless crisis and keeping people on the street? The ACLU, and we'll prove it. Stand by. Let me come back to Ann O'Flanagan. Ann, first the ACLU fought for the release of the crazies, all right, the people who were in mental institutions in 1975. And now you're fighting to keep them from being on the street, like the Billy Boggs case, of course. Isn't the ACLU kind of responsible for creating that homelessness in that case?
No. The whole position of the ACLU is to make sure that everybody's rights are protected, whether they're considered crazy by you or not. Their position is even to protect people like you and to make sure that you...
I don't want those near me.
The only reason that you are on TV today is because you have the right to speak. If the people out there...
No, thanks to the ACLU. All the letters I get to take me off the air are from people who love the ACLU.
All people, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of what they say, have a right to speak. Even people who have outrageous beliefs and don't know what they're talking about, like you.
No, wait. Really like me? Let me give you a reason. Let me give you a reason. Wait a second. Let me give you a reason why I think the ACLU is partially responsible for the homeless cases, all right?
Yes.
You released from institutions all over the United States because of your lawsuits, all right? You released literally hundreds of thousands of people who were institutionalized for manic depression, for varying problems where it was decided they were not harmful for themselves. They came out into society, couldn't get jobs, they're homeless, they're living on the streets. It's estimated that 30 to 50% of the homelessness is people who were released from these institutions. Now, what have you guys done after getting them released? Why don't you put your money where your mouth is, give these people work, give them homes, give them places to live?
The ACLU is not responsible to take on all of society's
No, you sure as hell make out like you are, though.
If there are homeless, if there are people starving, we as a society have to take on that obligation.
But you'd rather spend your money defending people on death row.
The public advocate released most of the people in the state of New Jersey, not ACLU. If you do your history, you'll find out that it was the Attorney General who formed the public advocate, and it was the public advocate that
And
filed
if
the
you'll
lawsuit.
do your history, Mr. Salerni, you'll find out that the ACLU had cases floating in each and every one of those states.
That's correct.
And this was the pressure that got the public advocate
The
to release.
difference was, the point was, the Constitution provided for that. As a matter of fact, I'm one of the attorneys that was appointed in Hudson County.
I thought you were going to tell me you were one of the wackos
That's right.
who was released.
Maybe. Then again, who has the right to say who's the wacko, me or you? That's what the Constitution
That's
is
right.
all
No,
about.
it's not for the Constitution, pal. It's for a doctor, a qualified doctor. There was no qualified doctor sitting who wrote the Constitution.
Can I say a
Tell
word
me,
about the
well, I
homeless?
want to ask you something, Mr. Downey.
Yes.
Give me a little background on the ACLU. When it was founded, I believe in Buffalo, New York, All right? Who were the founding fathers? What were their political aspirations?
It was founded in January of 1920 by Roger Baldwin as an organization dedicated to the politics of the very militant left. For example, the American Civil Liberties Union worked... Wait a minute.
I asked him, Salerno, zip it. Let me hear him. Then you can talk.
The ACLU worked against the working rights of men and women in this country by trying to defeat the Wagner Act. They called it the tool of the fascist state. They did not come against prohibition. They said nothing with regard to freedom of religion in their first 10 components of their organization. Samuel Gompers and John L. Lewis condemned the ACLU because they knew what you guys were up to. You were using the law to advance a political agenda. And you've no more fooled me than you fooled them. Now, the American Civil Liberties Union on the homeless question, when it gets below 32 degrees in New York City, Mayor Koch sends the police out with the psychiatrist to make on-the-spot judgments if a person looks like he might be not giving informed consent. And what the ACLU does is they have a project. It's called Project Freeze. They send attorneys out who stand over the police and the psychiatrist and tell these people of their constitutional right to freeze to death on the sidewalk. Now, let me tell you something. Cats and dogs know enough to get out of the street when it freezes, and you ought to know so, too. But yet you exploit people like Billy Boggs.
Let me hear. Judge,
The principle involved in the Billy Boggs case was that we don't want a totalitarian country where they round up people as undesirables as psychotics and put them in institutions. In this state, and in almost every state in this country, we have laws which give people a hearing. We don't round them up and put them in an institution and keep them there without a hearing. Without a hearing. And Billy Boggs was not constitutionally
No, she was just running into traffic, defecating in her pants, and burning money. She was a political prisoner like somebody in the Soviet Union who they put in an asylum?
She was a person who was picked up and incarcerated in an institution without a hearing. And that's dangerous. And that's what I meant when I said without the ACLU, you wouldn't be ranting and raving.
When they have the ACLU, these people are dying in the streets, and if she dies, the blood of her body is going to be on your hands. Because that's right. You know,
and that's exactly how they feel about the poor. That is absolutely the way liberals feel about the poor, about minorities. They'll give you all kinds of lip service. When you want to find racism, find me a real left-wing liberal. And I'll say you're racist.
Absolutely.
A real racist.
You know, Billy Boggs was working in the offices of the American Civil Liberties Union when you're getting all this press coverage. She was real good for you. Then you exploited that woman for ideological profit. You took her around to Harvard and Yale and the Stanford University law schools like a little dog and pony show. And then when she was used up for you guys, you dumped her out on the streets. You ought to be ashamed that you're defending that kind of exploitation. You're exploiting people.
Let's find out what the audience thinks next, all right? Remember, this is now a campaign issue, all right? Dukakis and Bush are fighting over this. Let's see what our audience thinks. That might tell us who the winner is. Stand by. All right. You know, every damn time you come to an impasse, the intellectuals and the elitists never want to turn to the people, all right? They want to go to their committees, their experts, the ACLU, this committee, Americans for Democratic Action. Best people to tell you what's going on, the American people. Let's start with you, pal.
Thanks a lot, Mort. My name is Tim Carl. I'm a member of Citizens for Better Government, a Staten Island civic group. And let me tell you something, lady. You talk about the women who are pregnant and having abortion. Do you care anything about the baby that they're carrying? You saying that because they're women, they're allowed to murder? Your sex gives you a right to murder? That's not true.
Gives me a right to determine whether I will or will not
There's no defense for that. There's no defense for murder, unless you're an ACLU member and you want to defend the murderers.
I, as a woman, have a right to determine what happens to my body.
You do, sweetheart. You do indeed. So cross your legs. Cross your legs. And no one can get up there. She has the right.
I'm your average American.
Wait a second, pal, you're right. She has the right to determine what happens to her. She can cross her legs. She can say no. She can make the guy wear a condom. She can take birth control. She can wear one of those half-ass tennis balls. She can do anything she wants. All right?
Can't murder, Mort.
But once the baby's there, sweetheart, it is not your body. It is a separate blood system. It is a separate blood type. It has a heartbeat within 8 weeks. It has fingernails, feet, fingerprints, everything within 8 weeks. And within 10 weeks, it has brain waves. And you tell me that life begins with brain waves is what the medical society says now. But you say, no, you have the right to kill it. You are full of...
While it is a fetus, it is not a baby.
Women in your audience feel about that.
Fine, I want to hear from the women.
Ask them.
I want to hear from them. Let me start with you, sir.
I'm not a member of any organization, but what I feel that the ACLU is the same people that defended Jane Fonda in 1968 are the same people that in 1945, when Germany was a beaten country, beat to the ground, just women and children left because their army was destroyed, bomb, bomb, bomb. But when it came to Vietnam in 1960, Jane Fonda, and we had to stop bombing them because she was there, they didn't care. They didn't care that American soldiers got killed. But like in 1945, the same people, you know what I'm talking about, Cy Freeman. The same, yes you do. Let me tell you something. They're the same, you know, they're the same people when Germany was a beaten country, and I'm very anti-Nazi, but they were a beaten country, but they wanted them bombed and punished and bombed.
Taught a lesson.
They wanted to just annihilate them completely. But in 1968, when American soldiers were getting killed every day in Vietnam, it's your country, right or wrong. Remember that. And you should
Go ahead,
defend it
pal.
100%.
Go ahead.
I'd like to address a question to this gentleman and these three up here. Do you live in an integrated neighborhood? Do you live with those people that you say that should be on the streets? Do you live in an affluent society, or do you live integrated with these people? Let me
Are you
ask
middle
that.
class America, or are you the hoi polloi?
First of all, what would that have to do with what's right and wrong?
I'll tell you what it has to do. Judge Sands in Yonkers, who wants to make sure that the poor are integrated into the middle class, lives in an area where there's less than 1% of minority, all right? So I say, if we're going to integrate, let's integrate in the middle class and in the upper class. Let them also have it.
I was robbed 4 times.
That's why Judge Sand was affirmed all the way up. And he's going to be affirmed all the way up in the future.
All the way up to what, the Supreme Court?
Yes, all the way.
He doesn't have a chance, pal.
We have a bet on that.
We got a bet.
Excuse me, Mort, I just want to know, how did you get these people here? Dial 1-800-LAWYERS? I mean, come on.
All right. Go ahead, pal.
Hi, Mort. I just want to address the lady up at the front. I just want to know, you say it's okay for abortion, but I don't remember anyone nominating you, God, to say who lives and who dies.
No, but the fact that I sleep with somebody does not mean that they can decide what happens to me and my body. I will decide whether I want to have a child or I don't want to have a child.
But you're against execution.
When he's born and nobody wants him. Then what happens?
How about some of the women? How about some of the women? Do you want to address this issue at all?
How do the
Don't be
women
afraid
feel?
to. How do the women feel? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me tell you something. You may think that it's your body, but that baby was sent from God, all right? Okay? You're lucky you're here from God, all right? And I just want to tell you something. You may think it's your body, but that baby, it may not be out in the world, but that baby's alive.
You know why the baby's being
condemned? And you have no
condemned?
right whether or not to kill it. It may be your body.
You know
but
why the
that's a
baby's
separate
being
life.
condemned? For residency. Why don't you guys get it straight? For residency. Because if that baby's in here today, I can abort it. But if it comes out tomorrow and I kill it, I'm a murderer. So it's residency because it lives in here. But it's alive, nevertheless, in here. That's the only reason.
It'll never be in there.
What?
That's the whole point. It will never
Let me hear what
be
Ann's saying.
in there.
Let me hear what Ann's saying.
You're standing up saying, in here, you can never carry a child, and you should not dictate what happens.
Let me
Wait a
tell you,
minute.
pal. Let me tell you something, Annie Fanny. Huh? Let me just tell you something. If I'm the father, I have made the deposit in your bank, baby. And if I made a deposit, I want interest on my money. And if you're a bank and you don't give me interest on my money, then I can take you to court. But the Supreme Court says, no way. I have no rights as a father.
Go ahead. If I get raped...
Wait a second. Go ahead.
If I'm raped...
If you're raped, go ahead. Tell me about your rape, sweetheart.
I have to have that man's baby if I get pregnant?
Let me tell you something, sweetheart. I did a study in 1981. Minneapolis, Minnesota. 3,103 rapes. Forcible rapes. Not one damn pregnancy out of them. What if? Let me tell you, sweetheart. Simple. You're raped, go to a hospital. I was just raped. Let them do a DNC on you before implantation takes place. Before it takes place, you'll never get pregnant. Don't wait until you're pregnant. Do it the next day. You have 48 hours to get to a hospital to have a DNC.
An abortion?
No, dear, it isn't, because implantation hasn't taken place. The baby cannot be born until that implantation takes place.
It doesn't hurt him if you have an abortion. It doesn't hurt him.
No, but it hurts. It might hurt because it might be the baby that cures AIDS. It might be the baby that cures cancer. And it might be the baby that saves your... when you're dying. We'll be back in just a second. Doctor, you got 20 seconds.
Yes,
Last
doctor,
year,
go ahead, doctor.
I called the headquarters of the American Civil Liberties Union just before the 4th of July, and I asked Alan Wright and the associate director, do you have an American flag? He hemmed and hawed. He didn't have an American flag. I said, I'll give you one. He said, no thanks. We have enough declaration.
May I answer you?
Yes.
In order to have a certain side like that, you've got to list certain case.
I beg your pardon?
I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
You don't know anything about the American flag.
You have an American flag,
The same
Judge?
double talk I'm giving you.
You have an American flag, Judge?
No.
You don't?
No.
Would you? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I have one. I also have a tank full of piranha where I throw traitors like yourselves, all right?
Where's the flag?
I always have an American flag, yeah. I always have an American flag. Let me tell you, all right? We've listened to the ACLU. You've made up your own mind. It's an organization that typically takes care of those of the ultra-left who are not concerned with middle America, who are not concerned with the working class people, who don't give a damn unless it's something so radically left that they can get themselves a great deal of publicity and a great deal of bucks, baby. And that's where it's at. Dukakis, why don't you quit the ACLU if you're going to go for the president? Good night, everybody.
Where else could you find an opera-singing goat herder but on the all-new Gong Show, coming up next right here on 31 UHF. We're